All right, so welcome to the 44th Automation Hour. And here it goes. All right, so all lines are muted. For those of you joining for the first time, please use the chat function to ask any questions. I see that people are already posting stuff. So I know you all know how to use that, y'all. And if we can't get to your questions today, whether it's related to Bonny's presentation or a general process automation question, we would like to continue that discussion on our Trailblazer Community Salesforce Automation Hour. And after the session, we will be posting the recording as well as the link to the deck out on our YouTube channel and on our website, and we'll post it out on the Trailblazer community as well as Twitter when it's available. Okay. Right. And if you haven't signed up for our upcoming sessions, I definitely recommend that you do. So if you don't make it to an actual session live, you will get the link to the recording after the fact. And I want to call special attention to the session we have on July 20th, where we have the Salesforce automation product managers on here talking about the cool process automation enhancements that recently went live with Summer 18. And we want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Concrete.io. Without them, we could not bring you this free webinar series. And here are your hosts, David, myself, and Rakesh. This was from Dreamforce. And we're really excited to have Bonny back on our automation hour. So I'm going to hand it over to her to give an introduction of herself for those of you who don't know her, and to give today's presentation.
Hey y'all, see, I had to get that Southern in there. Yeah, I don't know if y'all knew I was from Georgia, but anyway, I am, and I am also a Salesforce MVP. And one of the really fun things that I do, or get to do, is I'm a coach for the Rad Women program, one of many volunteer coaches. We dedicate time to helping women who are advanced admins and want to learn about coding. We help them to get on that track, and it's a really awesome program, really fun. There are men who also co-coach, but we're really trying to address that gap in women's education, prior to now, basically, when computer science was not that popular for women. And so we're trying to fill that gap. And it's a really fun program. One of the reasons I love it is that it's all about helping people learn more about Salesforce. And that's been a passion of mine for a long time. I'm also a user group leader here in the Bay Area. My blog is at www.snugsfbay.com, and that stands for Salesforce Nonprofit User Group, San Francisco Bay Area. But you can just remember snugsfbay.com. The flow that I'm going to show you today is actually 5 years old, but I'm going to show you how I've been updating it. I would encourage you to visit the original flow at flow.snugsfbay.com and play around with it. And if you decide that you want to get the update when I finally manage to get the update published, let me know. There's a form that you can fill out as part of the flow, and I can keep you posted. And I have the great help from Jennifer with the slides, so can we go to the next? Thank you. Okay, first let's try to understand the business problem. Okay, my starting point is that, well, users need easy access to training. Different types of users need different types of access, obviously. The brand new user probably needs a lot more training than they need permission to go into the org and look at the data and mess around with stuff. While the more experienced users, obviously, they want the training to be out of their way, but available whenever they want it. Now, those are two very, very different ways of presenting training material for Salesforce users. But maybe you also want to present training material to people who aren't using Salesforce. Maybe you have material that you want to deliver as part of your website or your particular mission if you're a nonprofit, you may be putting out educational material or promoting specific videos or recordings or newsletters. All of those things can be seen as learning content as well. So really everyone has the potential to benefit from the way that you can use Flow to deliver that sort of content. And whether you're an ISV, a consultant, basically anybody who customizes Salesforce can benefit by putting that training and that content into Salesforce. And anyone who has that sort of content on any website can benefit from using Flow as well. So my goal is to use Flow to ensure that users can see their individual training content. It's really specific to their needs, both the content and the way it's presented. And I want them to be able to see that throughout the Salesforce user experience. Next. Okay, I'll switch to the demo then. If I can figure out which screen I'm on. Okay. Can somebody tell me if you can see the blue screen or do you see the developer console?
See the blue screen.
Awesome. That's the one I was hoping you could see. How do I get this thing out of my way now? Well, still on my way. Okay, this is the original Flow. Can you see the whole screen or is it blocked by the GoToMeeting controls?
Looks like I could see the whole screen, Bonnie.
Cool, thank you. This is a presentation that I did for Dreamforce 2013, 5 years ago, on how to use Flow. Only it's not exactly the typical Dreamforce presentation because I'm not a huge fan of PowerPoint. I'm not very good with it. And I felt like I was better with Flow. So I took the PowerPoint template that they sent me and I used it for my background for my Flow. I put the images from that slide in and I used the background color that they gave me. And I tried to make my fonts match what they had offered in that slideshow. But it's a Flow. You probably recognize these buttons because this is the old style Flow button that we all know and love. And I presented my whole session basically using Flow instead of PowerPoint because I feel like it's such a strong tool for presenting learning content. This particular Flow, again, it's at flow.snugsfba.com. It does have a lead generation form. I don't do anything with these leads. It's just part of the Flow itself because, of course, I use that data to demonstrate the power of Flow. If you do want to be notified when the update comes out, though, feel free to fill this out and just put in the message that you want an update later on. The real interesting part of this Flow, actually, for me, happens in the next steps, though, in the later screens, because I wanted to incorporate video to do my demo in a way that could be delivered both in person when I was presenting at Dreamforce, but also to be able to have people deliver it to themselves, to access it themselves. So it's available on a Force.com site, and it includes videos that are specific to where you are in the flow. And that's the magic of using Flow with Visualforce. Sorry about the really irritating sound that this thing has, but it's one of the downsides of the video I chose to use. And if we go to the next screen, we can see that the video is updated to be different content. It starts from a different point in the process and continuing along to the next bit of content. There is no video, so this particular content didn't happen to have steps or anything to demo as part of it. So for me, this was a really fun thing to put together and share with the community. But it's kind of languished, and I wanted to figure out a way to bring it up to date. I've been sort of waiting for more power in flows to be able to do more of this sort of user interface customization. And now that we have really strong coupling between flows and Lightning components all throughout, this has been a really fun time with Summer 18 to play with this and redo it. And it turned out to be a lot easier than I thought, with a lot less code than what I had with the Visual Force pages. So I'm going to stop sharing and return. Oops. I think I didn't stop sharing. Thank you. Let's return to the slideshow. Because what we've seen is the original flow, and it was pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. But going forward, there's some other things that I would like to be able to address. I'd like to be able to track training assignments and the area that they're related to. So if I'm training on some particular content like how to use Flow, I'd want to be able to deliver that to system admins. And if I'm presenting content about, perhaps it's about the company's mission, then I would want that content to be delivered to other users in other environments, maybe related to the data that we're actually looking for. I also want to be able to deal with content from different sources. With that Visual Force page, all of those videos were just stored as static resources. So they didn't include audio because that would have made them too large, and they're short and a little bit not great as far as how rich and interesting video can be nowadays. So I wanted to update how that's dealt with and be able to provide a bigger variety of video and content. Even potentially figuring out how to deliver content from external websites, those that might have that iframe access turned off. You can block iframe access on your web page using Xframe options, apparently. So sometimes a website might be embeddable in an iframe and sometimes not. So that's going to affect how it works in your UI. I also want, down the road at some point, want to be able to show progress through a multi-step training assignment, and I want to be able to deliver that training on an as-needed basis. Right now, with the Visual Force page, people have to go out there and get it. There's no real clue where you are in the training. It just goes from screen to screen. There's a loop you can get stuck in. It's a little bit lacking on the controls there. So I wanted to see how I could do something a little bit more complex. Next. So there are 3 different delivery options that I was considering. The first one is login flows. That would help me with those brand new users, the ones that I don't really want to have access to Salesforce right away. Instead, let's get them some training. Let's make sure they've completed at least a little bit of training about our customizations and our business and all of that good stuff before they actually go in and access data for the first time. Usually users are happier when they feel like they've gone through significant training before they're thrown into the data. And so for the most part, that seemed like a really good option. The Lightning page or Lightning tab, that seemed like a pretty good option too, but more for the more experienced users. One of the nice things about it is that I could use it to access other websites and place it basically anywhere inside of the Salesforce UI. And then, of course, there's Lightning Out, which allows me to deliver content to anonymous site guest users and really present that sort of mission-oriented data. So for my visual flow presentation that's in an external site, for example, I'd love to update that with some more techy sort of learn to be a developer kind of content to go with the visual flow. Next. Okay, back to demo. So I mentioned that I wanted to be able to keep track of who was completing which assignments and which learning content. And I wanted to make sure that I had the ability to give certain users certain content at certain times. Well, thanks to Trail Tracker, I was able to do that. I took the Trail Tracker app that Salesforce has put out on the App Exchange and decided for my prototype here, I would use that as part of my demo. You can see that I didn't actually use it to pull in any trailhead data. This is all just in a sandbox, and in this case, I wanted to see what it was like to deliver my content rather than their content. So I just wanted to use their objects and fields, and I found it to be a really good starting point for my project. So these are the badges that are assigned, my custom badges that I've built. Really, it's more custom content. And you can see that I really just assigned it to myself. And let's see, sorry. You can see that I've assigned it to myself, and myself as a different user, and also to the online site guest user. I did go play around with the options that were available through Trail Tracker. Of course, it's intended to track those trailhead badges and all, so there's a lot of really good options with graphics and so forth. I haven't really figured out what to do with these. My graphics aren't as great as the lovely trailhead badges, which really are pretty. So I started with that data model, and I updated my page. And I was pretty amazed at how quickly and easily I was able to do this now without having to deal really with CSS styling myself. With the Visualforce page, I had to create my own CSS files and really tweak it and mess with every little pixel on the screen. But with this, I used the Salesforce Lightning design system and was able to bring in those existing logos. Sorry, it is the old logos, but I did want to draw that connection between the two, the original and the later version of the flow. And in the middle, I have actually updated the flow a little bit to see if I could bring in more rich content. Now, the way that I did this is using a Lightning Out capabilities of Lightning components. And with Lightning Out, you basically create a Lightning app through the developer console. Now, I think there's several different things that may be called Lightning apps. I think that you get a Lightning app when you create specifically a Lightning application in the developer console. I think they may call it a Lightning app when they have all of the component parts put together in Lightning. I think they call it a Lightning app when you go into App Builder and build a Flexi page. And I think it might be called a Lightning app when you go into App Manager and move your tabs from Classic to Lightning. But I might just have the terminology wrong. So um, in this case, I used Lightning Out and I did it through the developer console. And I created a component to display my flow, my new flow. So all pretty simple, actually. And the logic, instead of being handled by that Apex class the way it was with my Visualforce page, is actually just handled through the fact that flows can take input and directly from the screen that it's embedded into. So it was much easier to do this way. We were displaying the logos at the just using these SLDS, Salesforce Lightning Design System tags to place them and control where they fall on the screen. It's surprisingly easy, and I used a color from their color catalog, because the other nice thing about the Salesforce Lightning Design System is that they sort of pre-package these colors and styles that can help you create things that look like they fit into the Salesforce user experience. So probably I wouldn't want to continue using these really outdated logos in the future. And of course, this is still a work in progress, so I do say hello online form, online form being the name of my anonymous guest user. And I do this just so that hopefully you can see the parity of using this flow in different environments as I continue through the demo. But here we are in our visual flow that is just being run inside Lightning Out and on a site page. And instead of presenting all that data and trying to embed a teeny tiny video, I'm giving you the opportunity to know how many trainings are available to you. Do you have time to do those now? And then popping up a video from a particular source. In this case, it's a YouTube video. So there's a specific way to deal with that that's a little bit different than, say, a video that I own and have control over my own self. So my next option is a video. This is an MP4 that is stored on Salesforce as just a file on Salesforce. And I'm keeping the data up to date at the top based on what we know from the learning content here, what's defined in trail tracking. Again, took advantage of that data model that they already had prepared. And this MP4 is being played just using the standard HTML tags. But again, if I've got something like Vidyard, I have to use a different player. I have to use their player, so it's handled a little bit differently. I think I've got 2 of the Vidyard videos in here. And also a blog post, just to show some of the different types of content that can be delivered and how that different content fits into the same delivery mechanism, the same sort of framework. And once all of that is done, we give you the update of how much training you've done, and since it's an online form, it starts over as if it didn't know that you've done anything. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can go back to the slides for a minute. with the lightning out, the really surprising bonus to me is that I feel like it's going to be a lot easier for me to maintain and figure out because it seems to me to be a lot less code heavy and intensive than the Force and Open. I feel like it's easier to keep the look updated with the Salesforce Lightning Design System tags and components. And the fact that it's delivered on a site, Force.com site page, means that I could actually send a link to the page via email and access it that way. Some of the downsides to this Lightning Out solution, since it's anonymous guest users, I can't really keep track of the user's specific learning content needs. And nested components can present challenges. Sometimes they don't behave exactly the way I thought they would. For example, that logo that I presented, I had to really make sure that I put it in the component that the flow runs in rather than putting it on the flow itself. So I can put a flow into a component, or I can put a component into a flow, and I guess I could sometimes put a component, component inside a flow and put that flow inside a component, maybe. But things start acting perhaps not the way you actually intended. There's also some differences in the way things behave, whether it's running in the Lightning runtime or not. Just to be warned.
Bonnie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No.
I'm hearing a lot of static. I'm seeing people post that there's a lot of static coming in, so I'm not sure if it's something with your line.
Okay, yeah, I think it's probably my mic. Is that better?
Yeah, there's still a lot of static coming through.
Okay. Well, I can try to call in if you want me to switch. That will take me a minute, but I can certainly do that. Or I can try to switch. Let me try to switch my microphone.
Okay. We'll wait.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? And is the static gone?
The static is definitely gone. If you could speak a little louder, it's kind of soft, but I don't hear the static.
Okay, let's try this, and if it continues to be a problem, let me know, and I will try to call in instead. I apologize for the technical difficulties.
Oh, that's okay. It sounds much better than before.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Wait, I've lost track of whether I'm sharing my screen or not. But it's time for a demo, so I mentioned that I wanted to be able to deliver content to users inside of Salesforce, to those more advanced users. And so I've also embedded the same exact training flow here on a home page. And this is kind of a cluttered homepage. So being a sandbox, it's where I experiment with kind of the cool things that I can do and try to just have fun with the way I use some of the things that the Lightning components have to offer. So I created this little information component, which I can actually embed into my flow if I wanted to. But on this page, I've just put the flow right below that component. And we can bring up the same type of interface here inside of this home page and present training. Now, one of the problems that I experienced is that my Lightning Out version is on a dark background, so it's using white text. And for some reason, this particular bit of text, it's from a text template. It didn't get automatically formatted. So I went in and formatted it to be white on the dark background when we're back looking at it here. And of course, that has a negative impact on what happens when I run the flow on my homepage. So that's something I'm going to need to tweak down the line a bit. But we get the same ability to keep track of how many trainings you've done and what you need to do next. So that was just a quick example. I can then embed that on any sort of page. I can even put it inside of a console page if I wanted to with the Salesforce engagement. What's it called? Guided engagement. It's part of the Summer 18. And I'm going to show you that one a little bit later, but let's go back to the slides for now. Okay, so again, with the Lightning page, embedding the flow on the Lightning page, I get the feature-rich options of guided engagements and being able to put it on multiple kinds of pages, being able to put it into the console. One of the things that was a little bit tricky is those websites that don't support iframes. So for example, if I wanted to incorporate a trail mix into my training, that I found I had to send people to a new tab rather than having it embedded in my page. And so that may be something that they miss when it gets opened or aren't aware of. So that was a little bit of a downside. Could we go to the next slide, please? I think I've okay, so I wanted to show you also the login flow and how it behaves with the learning content that I've created. So I'm going to log in as a different user and see a different experience. Oh, well, I'm going to try to log in. There we go. Okay, same user interface. It didn't pull the name for some reason. I'll have to look into that little bug. And it tells me that this user has 2 trainings assigned that need to be completed. And again, it delivers that video up in whatever format we need it to be in. And we're getting totally different content for this user than for others. But this user, we want to do a little bit more before they actually go into Salesforce. We're sending them actually to that trail mix. This was the bit that, since it opens up a new tab, basically was hard to deliver for the user in the Lightning page experience. But for the user in the login flow experience, it's real simple to just give them a finish location that puts them off into whatever external or internal URL that we want to send them to. So that's neat, I thought, because I really just wanted to see all the different options. And then, of course, once they've finished all their training, then they actually get thrown into the org where they can exercise some of what they know. And in this case, they can look at their data, and this is the guided engagements part that I was telling you about before. So I can actually give them an action list that has flows as part of it, and they can run the flows and inside of this console and take care of any steps or escape the console and go reinforce their learning through whatever is offered here for them. This user just got up to date, so there's nothing offered, but there are other flows here as well, in case they have other ways to interact. So that was kind of a neat way of using the flow and being able to present the learning content right where they need it the most, hopefully where they're right in the middle of dealing with their data. And I need to apparently put Jen to work again and switch back to the slides.
Great. Before I move back to the slides real quick, Bruce had a question. For the login flow, does completing the trails badges absolutely allow or disallow continuing to log in, meaning training is required? How? Or do you have to just offer the training first?
So in the case of the trail mix, for the purposes of the demo, I had it so that it was easy for them just to be done once they saw that trail mix screen. But if the trail mix was assigned to them, I don't know how my trailhead is going to work specifically, but for any trail mix, the way that trail tracker works, you can assign those badges from that trail mix to a user. And with the flow, I can keep you from being able to log in to actually access Salesforce proper, as long as you have outstanding badges that you, or outstanding learning content that you need to complete. So the answer is not quite in this demo, but yes, in if I wanted to implement it that way, I could definitely do that as well. So one of the exciting things, and kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to go with the trail tracker objects and play around with it to see how that all fit together. And it just, for me, it was just coming together perfectly. I was really happy with all the options available. So with the login flow, we saw that it was easy to redirect to the external sites. There are some limitations around the Lightning runtime. There were, for example, I'll show you, I'm going to edit my page real quick. Let's see. Sorry, I'm going to have to go back to sharing. I didn't mean to switch back and forth on you guys so much, but here I go. There's another flow that I actually got from Alex. Was it Alex who's presenting on the 20th?
Oh, Alex Edelson?
Yeah, Alex Edelson has a GitHub account with some really neat flows available. And this is just how easy it is to add flows to a page, which you've probably all done. So one of the flows that he has in his GitHub repo lets you navigate through flow to a URL. And so I used that, created a flow to do that. And let me show you real quick how that would look. This flow didn't work the way I wanted it to for my login user, but I do kind of like how it works for my already in Salesforce user, because that flow fires automatically and gives the message that they are being navigated to a new page. So they have the choice of canceling out, of course, but in this case, whether or not they have badges isn't really going to help me control whether they actually go to the trail mix. So for the user who's already in Salesforce, that makes it easy to access the content, and that's kind of awesome. But otherwise, it doesn't control their behavior. So that's pretty cool. Be sure to ask Alex about that when he's on in July, because it was a really fun bit. And if we could go back to the slides, I'm so sorry to have you jump around so much like that. So yeah, those are I guess the main thing for me with the login flow is the size of the display area and not having control of that. Next. So we've looked at three different ways, very different ways of delivering learning content for different types of users, using the login flow for those users that we just want to focus on getting some training before they do anything else, using the lightning pages and tabs to give that context-specific reminder to users when they need it and when they want it inside the Salesforce user interface. And with the lightning out, we have that ability to not do quite as dynamic of content, but at least, or not individualized, but at least it is very rich and can control a lot of come from a lot of different sources. Next. I guess in summary, the thing that I really wanted to convey to everybody today is that Flow is just incredible. There's so much you can do with it. The sky is the limit. It's getting easier and easier to do awesome things. Lightning Components makes it super easy to customize the look and feel of your flow, to bring in data into Flow in ways that you couldn't easily do before. And the only caveat to all of that is with components nested inside of flows, because of course all those videos that I showed were actually components inside the flow. That's how that was controlled. Just think it through and document what you do, because once you get all those nested dolls, you really want to know how to put them back together again. And I think there might be one more slide. Nope. So thank you all. And if you've got more questions, I'd be happy to talk more about what I did. Yeah.
Gaurav posted one question on Success Community. If you can look at it, that would be great.
In the Success Community?
Yeah, it's a very long. Let me post it here. Give me a second.
Okay, thank you.
He's asking very short. Process Builder plus Flow runs in system mode, yes or no?
I did not combine my process builder and flows in this example, so I would love for someone else to answer that question.
Okay.
I mean, it should, because process builders are automations, right? But I don't know with the guided engagements how that's going to work, because with the guided engagement, you want it to be the specific user.
Oh, he sadly says this is in classic.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
In that case, I would imagine that it should behave as a system, as system rather than as a specific user. But that's a should behave. I haven't tested it.
Okay, it says it's throwing an error, and was wondering if other folks have seen Process Builder Flow run in system mode or not.
Okay.
I think we'll have to take that one offline. While we wait to see if other folks have any questions, Bonnie, for those of us out there who might not know how to configure a login flow, where do you go? Because it's not the same area as flow. If you could just quickly show us that.
Absolutely. Let me see if I can.
Let me just switch it back over to you.
Sorry. Really, I'll try to divide it up into more slides and more demo next time. Okay, let me see if I can remember how to do this. Okay, we got to go to Setup. And from Setup, the easiest thing to do is go to the Quick Finder and type in flow, because way down here at the bottom, you get the option for login flows. Way down at the bottom of the list of things that are flow related. And here's my training flow. You have to define it, basically just telling it that it's a flow, give it the name of the flow, the developer name, and you can assign it to a specific profile. So that's one of the ways that you can limit who sees what at login. And I requested that it be rendered in Lightning Runtime, but again, the link URL didn't behave quite the same on that home page that you saw it versus when I tried to use that same component in the login flow. So be sure to test things out before you commit to whether or not you can do it in the different environments that you can deliver.
Okay, well, we're still waiting for people to give us another question. For those who want to, because I know bringing in Lightning components into Flow is relatively a recent enhancement. How would someone go about bringing a Lightning component into Flow?
Well, here is the video player, and I should probably bring this up in my developer console because it's super easy. And I know a lot of admins, certainly not all, but a lot of admins have some experience with HTML and are somewhat comfortable with it. So it's worth noting that there is a lot of HTML that handles the really interesting parts of this. It's just using the video tags, HTML video tags. So this is my component. It's just a component. It doesn't have any JavaScript controller. It doesn't have any Apex controller. It doesn't have any CSS. Sadly, I didn't do documentation for it either, but hey, I'm still in Sandbox. There's still time. The only thing it does have is it has a design portion of the component. Components can have all of these things. Don't let it scare you off. The design portion lets me specify variables, basically variables that I can assign values to when I use that flow someplace. So in this case, my flow is going to pass the source URL for wherever that video happens to be. And in some cases, I wanted to play around with whether it was video content or some other kind of content that I might be trying to deliver. So that's why I have two different attributes. They're called attributes inside of the component, design component here. Think of them as variables or fields even, because they're all sort of the same thing. And again, it's really simple stuff. If it's not video, I want it to just use that iframe. And of course, I have to catch those URLs that I can't deliver inside of an iframe and do something else with them. And so on my flow, I have my video player set up here. It's using that component. The little C is my component called Media Player that I created. I give it the source URL from data that my flow has found for me, and I specify whether or not it's video only. I can compute that within my flow, or I can have that as a field on my learning content to let me know how my flow should deal with it. And let's see, if I wanted to add another, because if I decide to add those badge images or some sort of image to go with the content, I might want to add another Lightning component. It's simple, just to drag and drop and go in and tell it what component you want to add. Oh, let's add hello world. That's boring. I could pass it variables and so forth. You have the ability to do output variables, but sometimes the component doesn't need them or the flow doesn't need them, so you might just need to delete them. That was one of the things that I found when I was putting the components on, is that more than likely I had to go into outputs and delete whatever it was trying to do, because I probably didn't need it after all.
All right, Bruce has a question. Do you have control over the flow name or label that appears to users? I often get stuck even with saving as the new version, only the official flow name displaying.
Yeah, I played around with that. I don't have a good answer for you. If anybody has found a really great solution to that, let me know. You can turn it off on the header, so on the flow. You can see that I don't have the name of the flow showing up anywhere. But this is a screen by screen sort of thing that you kind of have to do. So it might not be the best solution in all cases. But whether or not you show the header, for example. But again, it depends a little bit on the context of where you are delivering the content.
So I know you mentioned Rad Women, and I'm a graduate of Rad Women, so I highly recommend it. If folks wanted to find out more information, Bonnie, on how to get into Rad Women, where would they go to find that?
Well, they're in the success community. So let's see what Google does on the fly. Sorry. Probably Google Rad Women Apex. Teaching women to code on the Salesforce platform. There is a website external from the Trailhead/Success community, but I believe it has links and really talks about all of the courses that are available and even the coaches. So Jen, you too can become a coach if you aren't already.
All right, so I don't see any other questions at this point. So thank you so much, Bonnie, for coming back again to present on Automation Hour and then showing us how we can use Flow to deliver training materials to our end users.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. And, you know, I'm going to keep working on this flow and hopefully have some badges incorporated from Trailhead and incorporate that with my custom content as well.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody.